Hi, folks. It's great to have you all here. And hi, Sue. Hi, Irina, Monica, Kari, Olga. Great to have you here. I've moved the Sunday meeting to Wednesdays because I found doing two meetings in one day was just taking up so much of my energy that I couldn't give 100% into the second meeting. So I moved it to a Wednesday so I can really be focused and do my thing. And what I would like to do, and what I've kind of been led to do, is to begin to create a vision for a new Earth, and and to, in a sense, recreate the whole Earth system, because the problems on Earth are systemic. It's a system problem. The problem here, the system is a control mechanism, and people are just unaware of it. And in my own experience, I only really became aware of it when I was woken up and my higher selves, was able to be. I have the energy in my soul body, the frequency raised, that I could actually go and visit my higher self in Sirius B. And I've made recordings about that before, which you can find one on my website. So I won't go into how that happened, what happened. But what I thought we should focus on is, what does an alternative Earth look like? And I will speak to it a bit about that from the point of view of my experiences on Sirius B. And I was also able to go with my higher self to Sirius A, where he allowed me and explained the Sirius constellation consists of four stars, well, consisted of four stars, which I've gone, and was Sirius A, B, E. The beings on Sirius B came from Sirius A. Now, Sirius A is about 33 times the size of Sirius B. So Sirius B is relatively a much smaller planet, but it has the same density, atmospheric pressure as A. So the beings from the blue aliens from Sirius A agreed amongst themselves to form a new community on Sirius B, which would be a cloistered community. In other words, they didn't allow any other being. Okay. Anybody having problems?
Yeah.
Could it be possible to mute everybody but you, Colin? I'm missing what you're saying.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah. I was just explaining my experience on Sirius A and Sirius B, and that Sirius A is a much more cosmopolitan, much bigger planet, and it's a trading center, galactic trading center. And so you have a vast number of different species of races ETs coming and going from Sirius A, as they used to do on planet Earth many hundreds of thousands of years ago. And then there was a breakaway community of blue avians who decided to move to Sirius B and create a cloistered society. And when I say cloistered, that didn't allow any immigration into Sirius B, and they created a protective magnetic morphogenetic field around the planet so no one could enter except by invitation and by special agreement. So the Blue Aliens started this this cloistered society, and they specialized and devoted themselves to knowledge, and became very respected all over the universe for their knowledge of science and genetics and of mathematics, um, and many other things, but mainly in the scientific fields. And so they are consulted throughout the universe, and their views are respected when dealing with, matters of genetics. And they are the master geneticists that are often used to see different planets. But they work very closely with the Pleiadians, because the Pleiadians are masters in the magnetic energies, which are that is that manifest as emotions, and they are very heart-centered beings, very loving group of people, and they work very well with the Blue Avians, because the Blue Avians are more head-centered and the Pleiadians are more heart-centered, so they give very good balance. And so these beings from Sirius B in the Pleiades were the main uh, uh, proponents and activists during the third seeding of Earth about 234,000 years ago, after what was called a 1,000-year war, where the populations of most of the populations of Earth had been destroyed. And so that these beings got together and created Earth. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the Sirius B beings. And when I went to Sirius B, when I arrived there, it was covered in mist. I couldn't see very far in front of me, and the being who accompanied me to their Maha, also, I've also spoken extensively about Maha. He left me there, and I had no idea what I was there for. And when I was standing there in the mist, I heard this telepathic message, may I enter your space? And so I agreed. But it's very important that you understand that as a protocol. Higher dimensional beings won't enter your space unless you give them permission. So if you suddenly have beings popping into your space, they generally will be unfriendly beings, or unless you are actually seeking to be, and so complicitly agreeing to them appearing, they will sometimes appear and then disappear, so that you get used to the notion, because they can be very intimidating, because they're very large beings. My higher self that I met were 10 to 12 feet tall. So, when the mist cleared and this being appeared before me, I was really looking at his belly. And when I looked up, and I was terrified in a sense, well, in every sense I was terrified. But when I looked up and I saw his eyes, that kind of relaxed me, because his eyes sparkled and they were so filled with love and kindness and gentleness that it kind of relaxed me a bit. And then I asked a lot of questions, once I became acclimatized to the surroundings. We sat down. I think he wanted to sit down so that he wouldn't be so far above me, and I would feel a bit more comfortable being at a much equal level. And then he began to brief me about what I was going to experience on Sirius B. And all the time, this mist was still around us. I couldn't really see very much. But what he told me was that He'd brought me there for a special purpose, and that purpose was to meet him. I had been told a long time prior to that, about 2.5 years before that, that I would meet a mentor who would teach me many things and, mentor me through the process of soul regeneration. And so I asked a lot of questions, and one of the first questions I asked him was, what is your name? And he said that his name he doesn't have a name in the universe. We all have a resident resonance frequency that is our energy signature. And so in a sense, they beings recognize each other from the energy that emotes from people or emits from people. And there are no two energy beings who are exactly the same in the universe. So we're all pretty unique in our makeup, because the computations for what creates our experiences through many lifetimes and in many space-time continuum gives us a particular resonance which identifies us in the universe. So he said to me he doesn't have a name, but I could call him Aizmir. And when I asked him why, he said I means one, Az means azure, which is blue, the color blue, and Mir means mirror. So he said that he is reflecting the oneness of the Azurites. Now, the beings on Sirius B, we call them blue avians, but they're also known as an order of Azurites. And the Azurites resonate at a particular frequency, and they have for a long time been what is known as a keeper of the blue flame, which is a fifth dimensional flame. And that goes back, to that time that I spoke of in an earlier video in Tara, where the morphogenetic field of Earth held the blue flame of Amenti. Now, Amenti was the morphogenetic field from Tara that represented the fifth dimension and the blue energy. And this goes back, and there's a lot of history to this, but anyway, so I asked questions like, what is it like here? What do you do? Are you alone here? Who else is here? And then he began to fill me in on some of the history of Sirius B. He told me that in a sense he was me before I incarnated here. So he was on a different timeline and had bilocated to Earth to be incarnated here as this person that you know as Colin Joe Byrne. And that took a lot of, I had a lot of difficulty getting my head around that, about timelines. But later on, he taught me about timelines and how timelines works and how time, space, and timelines work. And I've got a course on my program on bioenergetics on what timelines are. And I asked him, what they did on Sirius B, and he said, he cautioned me that I should keep my emotions and my thoughts in a neutral mode, because on Sirius B, what you think and feel manifests immediately. So beings that tend to stay in neutral mode, so they're not thinking creatively, they're not, because the thing about thoughts and emotions, when you think a particular thought and it's supported by emotion, so the thought is an electric wave and the emotion is a magnetic wave, and when they're in co-resonance with each other, they create a morphogenetic standing scalar wave, which has potential for manifestation, for manifesting. So he asked me to keep my emotions in neutral and to simply just observe what was happening. He told me I would meet some other beings from Sirius B who they considered me to be like a soul cousin because originally much of the DNA that was used during the third seeding was blue avian DNA, and there was a lot of DNA from other parts of the world, universe, and that had all been blended into the different race groups here. You know, the Caucasians, the Negroid, the Asian, they call them the white, the black, the brown, the yellow, and the red races on planet Earth. Um, and so we are a mixture of the DNA of many beings in many space-time continuum. And when I asked him what they did on Sirius B, he said that they simply go about doing well, he put it this way, they realize that they are sovereign beings and they are individuated expressions of the whole. So being part of the whole means to be in agreement with the whole. And so there is a covenant between the beings on Sirius B and others. And this covenant is an agreement, okay, and where they agree to certain stipulations and everyone conforms to that, behaves in that way. And that way they're able to more easily carry out their functions because they have very little fear or harm or, you know, beings in conflict with each other. And during this briefing, he also explained that we experience our reality in a hologram, and that physical manifestation is a hologram, and they are masters at what they call holography, which they can conjure up holograms out of thin air. And so much of what he later taught me was he showed me holograms, but often without explanation. I just saw the picture and then he wanted me to go and do my own research to understand what I'd just seen. Because many of the concepts that we have here on Earth are quite foreign to, the language is foreign to the way the multidimensional beings speak. So you kind of have to connect into the multidimensional way of living and understand the energetics of how it works so that you can start to connect to the universe and to universal thought. And so I learned that, you know, so I just, you know, understood that. And then eventually I had a long briefing and then the mist began to clear because he told me I was going to meet the other beings on Sirius B. And then mist began to clear and I saw I was surrounded by, oh, it must have been 100 or so people around me. But of course, they were all much taller than me. So I was like down much smaller than them. So I couldn't really tell how many they were. And they were just such loving and caring beings. And we just stared at each other for a while. And then I realized that, you know, I could telepath with them. So I sent out, I said, I acknowledge you and I love you and I mean you no harm. And I'm very grateful to be here. Something to that effect. But obviously I was as nervous as, you know, anything at that stage because, you know, I was outnumbered, outgunned and felt very small and insignificant. But they were very loving and very kind. And then I began to hear their thoughts and emotions. And it sounded more like music. So I asked my higher self, I said, you know, I'm hearing music, what is this? And he said, well, what you call words are just sound tones you emanate through your mouth. but in our language, we emanate our thoughts, and they are specific resonances and harmonies, so they sound like music. And we also send them out as particular pulse, so it has the same rhythm, rhythmic sounds that your music does, and that's their thoughts and emotions are like music. So beings there basically are sit and listen to music all day because they have this wonderful, sounds coming through their telepathic abilities, and that music that they have. I forgot what he called it. The music of the spheres, he called it, and that music uh, is their communication system. But on a one-on-one basis, when they telepath with each other, they actually telepath on the basis of that first acknowledgement and love and respect, and then they will communicate with each other on a one-on-one basis. But that is broadcast to everyone else, so it forms part of the music of the spheres. And the music of the spheres is meant to be a harmonious energy field that is their kind of protection around the planet. And that sounds very weird, but life on other multidimensional planets is very, very different from Earth. One thing I noticed about Sirius B that they didn't have a vast uh, diversity of species there. And when I asked about that, because I didn't see any animals or insects, I didn't see any birds, I didn't see water, but like rivers or things, there's just lots of lush vegetation, but not a great deal of variety in the species. And they said that they'd done that purposefully so that there wouldn't be, they wanted to create as much harmony as possible. And diversity often introduces more potential for conflict. And as you know, Earth is has a huge diversity of species on the planet. So naturally, that is going to create potential for conflict. So in us thinking about a new Earth, we have to acknowledge that we have to acknowledge that there is this diversity on our planet. We have to respect that diversity, and we have to work within that diversity, because in a sense, that diversity is a wealth that this planet has. I was told that after the third seeding, Earth was considered to be the jewel of the universe. It had the most the variety of species. It had the most beautiful landscapes, large oceans, plenty of water, and all of that contributed to a co-resonance in our solar system with the sun and so on. So it was very much a sought after planet, and that, of course, attracted many people, beings from other dimensions who wanted to come visit Earth and see Earth and experience it. And of course, there was a lot of envy about the diversity and the amount of different minerals there are on the planet. But the first thing I noticed about Sirius B was the huge amount of respect that the beings there had for each other and for everything else. There was never any negativity on Sirius B. There was always just kindness and giving and acceptance, and they are very, very clever, very, very smart. And the intelligence factor is like way over my head. I've just been amazed over the years, the more that I've learned, that how they understand the wholeness of everything, you know, in the universe. So, in a sense, what I've tried to do in my courses is to present that holistic picture. So it's a 3-year course to people. So at the end of 3 years, they will just have had a glimpse into what it's like in the universe. But, you know, then I asked my higher self why Earth, what went wrong with Earth and what had happened here and why our societies weren't the same as on their society. And of course, he explained to me about the fallen angelics and told me a bit about the history of the fallen angels, yeah, how they had had been part of many beings who'd come here and befriended the people on planet Earth. And there was a vast amount of trade in minerals, and we at that stage had vast cities. Arimathea on Atlantis was, you know, a beautiful city that had been built with white granite and had huge towers, energy systems and spirals and castles. And the beings on Atlantis were very advanced, advanced beings. And many of us are descendants, have part of that genetic DNA in our genetics. So yeah, and then there was Lemuria, which was also a very beautiful place, very lush vegetation with a great diversity of species. And they were devoted, Lemuria was more devoted towards the kind of devotional side of life. So they had monasteries and sanctuaries where beings could come and just get their energy fields replenished. So yeah, so what had happened to Earth, the fallen angelics had come here and set up the system. They corrupted Earth by bringing in a broadcast system, and they brought in a moon that the humans on Earth thought was an asteroid from the asteroid belt, but it was in fact a manufactured construct that was being set up for a system that was being set up long in advance of before humans became aware that there was a broadcast system set up by the fallen ones on Saturn, and they were basically wanting to take over the entire solar system. They had already destroyed a planet called Malbak or Marduk and blown that up, and because they originally were 12 planets in our solar system. So Malbak was blown up. That knocked Nibiru off its rotational plane, and it was purposely done that it was at 23.4 degrees. You take 90 less 23.4, you get 66.6, and that's where the original mark of the beast comes from. Because later on they knocked Earth off its rotational field also by 23.4 degrees. And so they used Nibiru as part of their broadcast system. And because in a sense, the antenna of Earth is always facing towards that Nibiru alignment. Yeah, so the fallen ones had also created systems there that were designed to enslave human beings, and humans have been enslaved here. But one of the things they've used very effectively is to keep humans in fear and obedience. And so they've created they've created a large number of systems that are designed to do that. And one of them is law. And I was quite shocked when I learned from my higher self about how law is from an energetic perspective, is a word spell. So they've cast the word spell on earth that through the words and through a corruption of language, they've created a system where you have duality of meaning in words. Like C, S-E-A, and S-E-E can be the same sound, but they have different meanings. And all these different words that are used to confuse humans and keep us guessing. And they've set up a legal system here where the moment we are born, we are monetized into a monetary system, and that value that is monetized by the fallen angelic is then used by them in their international trading. So in a sense, we are their gold that creates the value for their own monetary system, not talking about Earth's monetary system. But eventually Earth's monetary system began to act the same way as their monetary system. And the moment we're born here, we monetize, we also corporatize, in that we are considered to be lost at sea because it's maritime, it's based on maritime law, and it has a lot to do with how ships come into a dock. And then the captain has to provide a manifest. So the beings on the ship are the manifestation of the manifest. And the captain then presents that manifest to the harbor master, who then takes control of the cargo on the land. So in a sense, when our birth certificates are registered, that is the manifest that is passed on to the controllers here, and they then own the cargo on the ship. And so when we are born, we are monetized, we corporatize, and we're considered to be lost at sea. And the rules regarding being lost at sea, if you lost at sea for 7 years, then you lose all your assets. You lose all your belongings unless they are claimed. For instance, if you lost at sea and your family claimed your assets, then your assets would belong to the family. But if your assets weren't claimed, you would then be considered to be lost at sea, and all your property would be taken over. So in a sense, that is the rule, that is the legal system that they have here, that by the age of 7, if you haven't reclaimed your value, which was created when you were born, you're considered lost at sea, and you lose your status as being able to claim your value back. And many people have tried to claim their value back, and it's not possible because it's hidden by so many things. Like your birth certificate is linked to a certain Federal Reserve or Reserve Bank, and they hold the value, but they don't hold it in money, because you are the value that gives value to money. So based on our value as beings, as this corporate entity that then enters into a contract of labor with the powers that be, then we enter and we then agree complicitly to serve them. And agreement can be in many forms. There can be explicit agreement where you have a contract and you sign it and you get an explicit agreement with, on that contract. And then there's the complicit or implicit agreement where you don't actually sign the contract and someone else signs a contract on your behalf, and you later agree to that by complying with the terms of the contract. So we haven't explicitly agreed to the contract we've entered into. It was entered into on our behalf by our parents, and we didn't reclaim our value by the age of 7. So it is considered in maritime law, that we have now complied with the terms of the contract, and therefore we have agreed to be the labor and slaves of the controllers here. And then they created a language and a dual legal system. You have the maritime law, And then you have the Universal Commercial Code, which was a separate law which ran commerce on the planet. And this commerce is run on the basis of this system that they've created called maritime law. So our value is traded on bond markets around the world. And the controllers yet trade in the value of humans. And based on the profit they make on that, they then create the banks, which then lend money to humans when you have a mortgage bond, for instance. And then your value is used to create that money. Because when you apply for a mortgage bond, the bond is granted on your ability to repay the loan. So it's the value that you intrinsically have in the slave labor that you will provide that creates the money that you borrow. So the banks print this money out of thin air. It's just a valued number in a computer somewhere, and they create this money. And so we think we've borrowed. The bank has loaned us money, but they haven't loaned us anything. There was nothing to lend except our value. So on the basis of our value, they create the system of creating money out of thin air. And so we enter into this false value system where value is basically considered to be the amount of money or possessions you have. So it becomes a very materialistic society, and we have become a very materialistic society, and we really have forgotten our roots. And that's very unfortunate because we don't understand that we are being energy beings and that we are connected to the universe. We've adopted a system of law that manages us, and we comply with that system of law. And as the saying goes, then they've got you by the balls, because it's their system. You comply with it, or we comply with it, and there's no escaping it in their view. But there is a way to escape it. And people are beginning to smarten up, because once you become aware of their system, you can start challenging their system and start taking your sovereignty back as a soul being, and begin to reestablish a new earth. So a new earth has to be based on a new system of law. And the law that is used in the universe is the law of one, and which says that all beings and all soul beings, all energy, all conscious soul energy beings are connected to each other, because the basis of creation is not birth. The incarnation, the basis for incarnation are waves of energy. The waves create a morphogenetic field, which are then, the waves create quanta create a morphogenetic field, the morphogenetic field creates atoms create molecules create cells. So what we see is a cellular construct of the underlying cause, which is waves of energy. So we fluctuate between waves form and physical form. And we flash on and flash off all the time, but we don't see the flash on, flash off. It looks like we're solid, but we're not actually solid. We're vibrating beings. And this vibrating and the frequency of that vibration will determine our reality. So we create our own reality, and we don't realize that the reality we're creating is someone else's reality. We've been brainwashed into and complying with the system, which just creates a reality that is designed, authored, edited, and scripted by somebody else. So we have to really change a system of law here and go back to common law, common universal law, which is very simple to understand. It's do no harm, cause no loss, and do not impede the freedoms of others. Now, if you look at this lockdown that has happened here, under common law, they have broken all of that law. The law of do no harm. There's incredible amount of harm that's been done by this lockdown. Cause no loss. There's enormous amount of loss that is humans have suffered. Loss of freedoms, loss of possessions, loss of jobs, loss of opportunities, loss of ability to express oneself. Enormous amount of loss. And then there's do not impede the freedoms of others. Well, they are impeding our freedoms. We are confined into our homes, and we don't have the ability to move around as we please. And this confinement thing, the whole shutdown really is a gross violation of our sovereign human rights. And so we allow these stupid laws to exist on this planet, and we comply with them because we are really ignorant of what's really going on and how the universe is supposed to work. So, I would like us to begin to think about this and take on board the challenge. Not that we have to go out and wave banners and try to convince people, but we just have to hold the energy and the knowledge. Okay, knowledge is energy. When you have the knowledge, you can broadcast that knowledge out into the universe through the Earth's grids. Okay, and we are connected to the Earth's grids, and the Earth's grids carry this information. It's like an information network. And when we hold that energy, that is automatically fed into the Earth's grids. And that's what I did for 8 years, was holding energy and feeding that energy into the Earth's grids in order to change the consciousness of all the other beings on the planet. And that's how powerful we are, that we can feed our consciousness into the Earth's grids, and that can change the consciousness of the planet. And so we don't have to go out and try to convince other people, but what we have to do is to hold that consciousness within ourselves and to understand that we are sovereign beings, and we can revoke all prior agreements. So that agreement that our parents made with the governments here, the king, when they register is regus, which is a Latin word for king. So in a sense, they register, they give over to the king the property that has just been docked into this world, which is your birth, like the ship. And that birth then is entered into the realm of the king who owns the land. Okay. And so we get lost at sea and we remain shipwrecked. And it's done purposefully. It's like a magic spell. And the fallen ones have no power, but they're extremely good at illusions and creating illusions and distortions and deceptions. And they are masters at that. And so we have to start understanding the deception that's taken place here and how they've deceived the entire human population on this planet. But it's time that humans start waking up and taking back their power, which they hold within their soul bodies. That is pure energy. And once we understand it, we can use that energy constructively by feeding that into the Earth's grids. We then begin to telepath that message to others. It's like a carrier wave that goes out into they want to create the 5G system here, which is a carrier wave. So we can create an alternative carrier wave, which is much more powerful than 5G, because 5G is only a microwave and it can't travel a great distance, and it needs boosters along the way to carry that signal. We are far greater than that. We can feed that energy into the Earth's grid, which is then carried around the planet. Okay, and so that's how we can change this planet. But in these Wednesday meetings, what I'd like us to do is to begin to think about and visualize a new earth and what it would look like. And this first meeting, I thought we would spend some time just speaking about the law, the legal system here, and how we can defeat it and go back to common law. Because if we hold the consciousness of common law, which is do no harm, cause no loss, and do not impede the freedoms of others, we then can live our lives where we become conscious of how we create harm or how we harm other people. And there are many ways we can harm other people, but it's not just people, it's the animals, it's the planet, it's all conscious beings on the planet. When we become aware of how we create harm to these beings and stop creating this harm, not collectively, but individually, because we then become a collective and when we take responsibility for ourselves, we then are connected to the collective. Because it works exactly the opposite here. People think that a collective is a bunch of beings who agree, okay? Now, in the universe, we are connected through energy. And the energy that we hold within ourselves connects with the energy, with the same frequency of energy of other beings. So our collective is when we take responsibility for ourselves and become aware of the harm, loss, or impeding of others' freedoms, that we begin to change the resonance of the energy we produce. Because at the moment, what people are producing is fear. They fear death. And they feel this virus is going to kill everybody on this planet. And so given over to that stupid notion, they then have complied to allow their economies to be destroyed. They've allowed their social norms to be destroyed. They've allowed their activities to be curtailed. They've allowed the expression of who they are to be curtailed and impeded, really. So we can change this planet. And I'd like us to begin to think about that. How do we create a new system out of it, the common law, not based on maritime law, where we are no longer a limited liability company, because that's what a company is. And it was introduced specifically for that purpose, that it limits liability. So then we're no longer responsible. We don't have this responsibility. We have limited liability. And that limited liability gives us license to do harm, cause loss, and to impede the freedoms of others, because we can't be held accountable, because we're not persons anymore. We're not human beings anymore. We are a corporation which has limited liability. So that's how we overcome the problem of responsibility. We don't have to be responsible anymore because we have limited liability. And so people don't take responsibility very seriously on this planet because they don't understand who they are, what they are, and what their power is. You know, so we have to really get back into that understanding that we are far more powerful than we imagine ourselves to be. And on Sirius B, they have that understanding. So everyone takes responsibility for themselves. That everyone is a sovereign being. And as sovereign beings, they agree, they make agreements, they make covenants amongst themselves about the way things are going to be. And so they co-create the reality, a hologram that suits them. So they become masters of their own hologram, so they can give themselves the experiences that they want in that hologram to assist them in their soul journey to go into higher dimensions. And so humans have got to start taking responsibility for themselves, come to an agreement with each other that we will no longer be held under maritime law, but we will adopt for ourselves and take responsibility for what we do and say under common law. Do you see the big difference in that? And the one will change the other. And but humans are becoming quite aware of this. There's large numbers of people, but the problem is that there's not enough people taking responsibility, not enough people who are aware of that. So that's why, in a sense, one of the reasons I wanted to speak about this this evening, or well, it's evening here, is because this information needs to get out across this planet. That people have to start being aware of the prison system that exists here, where we are our own prison keepers because of our compliance with a system that wants us to be prisoners. So in a sense, we lock our own prison doors and we throw the key away. And, it's crazy. And that's the reality we face here. And that's why if we want to create a new Earth, we want to create new systems on this planet, we have to change the maritime law systems here and no longer agree to exist under maritime law and to re-establish ourselves under common law. And common law works very well in the universe. On Sirius B, I see that there's no harm caused, there's no loss caused, there's no impeding of the freedoms of other beings. And, they can travel freely throughout the universe if they want to. And they are masters at time travel and timeline, manipulation and change. So they're aware of how timelines work and how they exist in many places at the same time. We're already conscious of this plan, but I'm aware that there is my higher self Maha, there's my higher self Aismir, and we all one being, just having different experiences on different timelines, in different time-space continuum. And we have to really change, have a massive change, paradigm change on this planet. Because as Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it in the first place. So trying to create a new Earth based on the existing system ain't going to work, because it just creates more of the same thing. It perpetuates a different kind of problem, because the problem that caused this problem has not been dealt with. And the problem that has to be dealt with is the consciousness of beings there. We have to create a new consciousness of this on this earth and create a new paradigm of thinking, of feeling, of behaving, of speaking. We have to establish new standards and values, and we have to practice attitudes that are self-fulfilling and not self-defeating. And in a sense, I love that movie with Jim Carrey, where I think it's me, myself, and Irene, where he wrestles with himself in his motor car and he throws himself out of the car. Because that was a typical illustration of what humans do here. They wrestle against themselves and they throw themselves out of the car. They self-defeat, So we have to get out of the cycle of self-defeating. And we can do that, if we pay attention and we focus our energies in the right ways. And are aware of the power that we hold to change this planet. And I think it's very exciting because I see this planet moving in that direction. So I'm not jumping the gun in the sense that we haven't got there yet. I think we're getting there, and all of us create our future in the present. So what we do in this present time will affect and create the future that we want to see. So when we begin to visualize a new Earth and begin to have a vision of an Earth that is free, of beings that are free, where there is no money, where there's no jails, there's no sickness, there's no poverty, where there's abundance for all. When we begin to think about the earth in a new way, we can create that because it's really just a hologram. And the hologram is created by energy, light and sound energy. Yeah. And when we hold that energy within us, we begin to change the hologram outside of us. So I hope that brings some understanding to that. I'm going to stop talking now. And anybody who wants to ask a question or make a comment or has a contribution they'd like to make, please go ahead.
Colin, this is Hamid. I wanted to say something that happened to my friend's boyfriend this last weekend. It kind of reminded me of what happened to you in terms of your awakening. This guy, my friend, had been talking to him for a long time, and he would never really accept the awakening process. But then in the last weekend, he kind of started just freaking out. Like in 4 days, he became sort of awakened, but then there was a side effect to that. He kind of started getting a little bit crazy, almost started acting manically. He started like wanting to go his neighbor's house. He started throwing his phone away. It just really, really strange. And my friend right now is struggling with this situation. And I feel that what is happening right now is that people are like waking up in the first wave that is happening. And this guy, I think, is one of the first waves. And I think they're like almost like babies, like, Matrix, Neo waking up and not knowing what the hell to do.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand what do we do with those people, because this guy was pretty solid, and right now he's basically just falling apart, and we are trying to just hold him together. We don't know what the hell to do. And so I think this is an important topic to talk about, because I think so I would love to hear what you have to say about this, because I want to talk to my friend, and she's dealing with this right now, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah, no, I understand that. When I started waking up and starting learning this information, in a sense, I fell apart very much as well, and I had to go through something that is called the dark night of the soul. It's called many other different things, but really you think you're going crazy. And I spent many nights crying myself to sleep and banging my pillows and saying, this can't be true, this can't be true, this can't be true. I didn't want to know, but I did want to know. You go through that tearing within yourself. And that's going to happen to a lot of people. I've also, in this last week, there are 3 people that I'm aware of who have just suddenly woken up, and they're starting to ask questions. And so they come to me and say, well, please explain what's happening, what's happening in my consciousness. Suddenly I understand this stuff, and they don't understand what they understand. That's the hard thing. And that's also what I experienced, that I had this knowledge within me, but once it came into my conscious mind, it was very difficult for me to make any logic out of it. And that was created the conflict within me, because I knew deep within me it resonated, but I didn't know how it resonated or what I was going to do with that information. But my higher self went through that period with me, and he largely just let me go through it. And when I cried out to him and said, what's going on? Please help me. This is a pretty shit experience. He just said, it's something you have to go through. Each one has to go through the dark night of the soul. And he just encouraged me to keep on, keep on being strong, being courageous, and facing up to, the experience I was having. And, I didn't suddenly emerge out of the dark night of the soul. It was a progressive thing that, that period of my life took about 3 months. And it was really hell on earth because I literally thought I was going mad. In fact, many of my friends also said to me, "Look, you're losing your mind, pal. You're gone. You're not thinking rationally anymore." And I knew I wasn't thinking rationally because the rational mind cannot understand that. It's the God mind, the super consciousness within us that can understand it. And we are engaged in the conscious and the unconscious mind, but we don't engage the unconscious of the super conscious mind. And once you begin to operate from the super conscious mind, you understand things that are not easily understood with the mind, the conscious mind. So yeah, it's really a change of mind. And in a sense, when you begin to change your mind, you go a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting because his awakening definitely reminded of you, because in 4 days, my friend, who's his girlfriend, started seeing all these amazing synchronicities. A lot of things started happening. But before this, whatever she was telling him, he was kind of just ignoring her, all the awakening process. But what's interesting is that, again, these things that draw my attention towards you is that what he was doing before, what he was being before, it wasn't really authentically him, right? He was just playing a role. He was acting. He was a character. It wasn't real.
Yeah.
And like that, he was extremely reliable, extremely dependable, a very go-to guy. He would never lose his temper. But I was tell my friend that this is really not him. There is stuff going on. And now that this is happening, he's just completely acting complete the opposite way, right?
Yeah.
And but I think this is actually a good thing, because he's going to get to a balance point, right? Because he was playing this character before. Now he's actually being his authentic crazy self, and then at some point he can come back and start balancing out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically what happens. We have to rebalance our energies, and it's like we transition from the conscious mind to the super conscious mind. And when we activate the super conscious mind, it begins to activate knowledge within that we hold within our junk DNA, because our junk DNA carries our soul history, and it carries the information of the universe. And it's the junk DNA.
I can't find it. How do I get it back? There it is.
Yeah, because
the only way I can switch it off is to close my phone.
yeah, we have two different kinds of DNA. We have genetic DNA and we have junk DNA. Now, medical science knows very well what genetic DNA is. It's basically the programming is held for our genetics is held in DNA, and it has a certain patterns that actually define our physicality and our genetics. But our soul DNA, in our soul bodies, we hold something called soul codes. And the soul codes are representations of our soul experiences and our soul memory. They're held like, it's like a program language, but it's little squiggly things in our soul codes that don't look like anything. They actually look a bit like Sanskrit writing. But those soul codes correspond in our physical bodies with the junk DNA. So our junk DNA holds all that memory of our soul history. And when you begin to connect with your superconscious mind, it begins to unlock a lot of that information. And it makes no sense to you because it's information you don't understand with the conscious mind. So you have to learn to rest in the unconscious mind. And I started to do that through meditation until I could bring back a lot of that memory into my body, into my cellular memory. And so I began to remember previous lifetimes that I'd had, which were locked up in my soul history. So yeah, it's a heck of a transition to go from the conscious mind to the superconscious mind, or to wake up. Waking up, is very hard to do, as the song goes. Sorry, I had everyone muted. Does that, Hamid, what I would...
Yeah. It's interesting because, I was always a freak. So people like me, I know people like me who we never really believed in the matrix. So for us, there was never awakening process. So, and it's one of the things I'm trying to do right now with some people like me. I'm like, we need to have compassion for all these people have to awaken right now. We didn't have that, but they have that. And it's the hardest thing. I mean, you were just talking about that, how hard this is, how impossible this is.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. But I kept talking to myself, and my higher self kept talking to me through my consciousness, saying, "Just keep it up, keep going, keep going." And he often would say, "Keep on keeping on, just keep on keeping on. Go forward, go forward, go forward. Press on." Because in pressing on, you reach deeper into your soul. And as you do that, I mean, you suddenly become aware of how stupid you've been in the past, how disconnected you are from reality, and how everything you've learned is a lie, and the realization of that is extremely traumatizing. And I was extremely traumatized. For 3 months I was traumatized. And when I came out of that period, I became aware that I was extremely traumatized. So I had to spend a lot of quiet time just putting pieces together, not interacting with other humans, because often I would lash out at people. I would get angry with people and say, "Don't you realize how stupid you are?" Because that's what, the fight or flight reaction that we have here. And I became judgmental of other people because they didn't know the knowledge that I had. So I began to put myself above them, and I had to say, whoa, 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 no, that's not how the universe works. There is no greater or less in the universe. And so I allowed myself to then begin to be compassionate with other people who were going through that. And that's very hard to do, because what I wanted to do was shake everybody and wake them up. Whoa, wake up, wake up. But they are sovereign beings, and they wake up when they choose to wake up. There's nothing we can do about it. So as all we can do in our own sovereignty is to be compassionate and hold that love and compassion and respect. We have to continue to respect other beings who are waking up, because at the moment there are many who are waking up. This lockdown has also had the effect that suddenly people are waking up. I've had, since the lockdown, I've probably had as many people enroll in my course that I've had for the last 6 months before the lockdown. So people are wanting answers, they're looking for answers. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to give them answers. But we can do that as a group. if we can, hold on to that consciousness, and we begin to change the hologram, because the hologram is our thoughts and our emotions. And as we become masters of that, we can create the magnetic wave of emotion that carries the thought everything, and that goes into the universe. But what's been happening on this planet, people they don't have coherence between their thoughts and their emotions. So the one collapses the other, and that information never gets to the universe. So when we feel love and we give loving thoughts, that is carried. That supports a wave that creates the morphogenetic field, which is then carried through the grid lines. I know I'm talking about some stuff that people may not understand, but that's how I'm telling you how that's how it works.
Yeah, like what happened to me is that my cousin came to me, Colin, and she's a PhD in genetics. She's extremely brilliant, and she's really not into any of this stuff. And she kind of came to me almost picking a fight with me, trying to like prove me wrong or something, and say, hey, you've been saying all this stuff, and what do you know more than I do? And I'm like, I don't know anything more than you do. I'm not claiming to know anything. This is my thought process. If you're open to it, I will share. If you're not, that's completely okay.
Yeah.
And somehow that diffused her anger or something towards me. And then this girl that I didn't expect to change because of my saying, hey, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm humble. I'm not trying to change your mind. She actually started seeing things.
Yeah.
Right? So if you actually want to awaken people, the best way is not to push them. If they come to us, I think the reason, Colin, you are successful and your course is filling up and people are coming to you because you have a lot of humility. You have a lot of compassion. Without that, people are not going to be interested in what we have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. My view is to wake other people up is to be awake, fully awake yourself, and to take responsibility for your words, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your words, your standards and values, and your attitudes in life, and only because that resonates to other people. There's that old saying, "What you are speaks louder than what you say." So if we begin to behave like awake beings, and and take responsibility on a moment by moment basis in every present moment, be aware that we have that power. We're very powerful beings, and we can exercise love and compassion and kindness and gentleness and patience with people. And once people begin to see that, they say, well, how come? Why are you like this? And then that gives you the opening, because people want to know, but they will only want to know when they can see how effective it is with other people. Yeah. I have some people, friends from the past, who hate me because they liked me when I was that other person, the actor, as you say. I was acting out a role, and I was not being authentic, and it wasn't me. I was playing out the role that all of them wanted me to play, and I was complying with their expectations. So breaking away from that, many of them now hate me, and they speak badly of me. But that, to me, that doesn't matter, because I am who I am, and I know who I am, and they are who they are, and they're entitled to be who they are. I don't want to change them. They can only change themselves. And so we all have to take responsibility for the change that we are experiencing, and that will change the planet. Because we are such powerful beings. When I was on Sirius Being, I saw the power of creation and manifestation they have there. you know, how they can move through the universe and go from planet to planet. And they can do it at will, you know, and they just do it through this whole energy that they have in their soul body, because they know how it works, and they can use it, you know. I know how it works, but I can't use it on this planet effectively because I'm still in the system. But I can help to change the system. When the system changes, then I can fully express, you know, the power of that exists in my soul body. In a sense, I sometimes have to curtail my energies and my resonance, because if I do let my energies get up, frequencies get too high, I start to interfere with electrical systems. And so my computer stops working, lights stop working, motors stop working. You know, so I become dysfunctional on the planet. So many people are raising their frequencies. I'm trying to sometimes keep my frequency down. But it's amazing how powerful we are. We can travel through the universe, you know, like I had to raise my frequencies to be able to go into the fifth dimension. And we have that ability within us, you know, to do that. And we can go travel interdimensionally quite easily if we know how. Okay, wrap up. Anybody else have any comments? I'm going to record this, so if anybody wants a copy of the recording, let me know, and you can listen to it again. But I invite you to come to these Wednesday meetings, so we begin to formulate in our own minds the energy that we want to use, and the visualization of a new earth based on a new paradigm and not on the old paradigm. And if we understand the changes that have to take place, then we become the change. We can create this new earth. You know, and having said that, it's being created already. It's already changing. You may not understand this, but it is already changing because it's being deemed. You know, our soul families are here. They're all around us, and they are encouraging us to do this. And you know, they're like watching us spectators, saying, "Go team, go, go, go." They're rooting for us. They want to assist us, but we have to do the work. You know. So love you all. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been great to bye Kari, Monica, Hamid, Arina, Olga. Love you all.
Thank you, Colin.
Okay.
Thanks, Colin.
Colin, thank you so much. Have a
Okay.
great day.
Cool.
Bye.